Hey, Master Traders. Greg here from Master Trader. This market has done its best to keep the majority off base and wondering, is this correction going to continue or not? As you may recall, subscribers may recall that on the March 10th letter, I said possible sucker rally coming. And while the markets did move up a bit from there, depending on which market you were looking at, um, really it wasn't much of a rally. It was more of a blip up. The NASDAQ 100, which we'll take a look at, did have a greater move up. And, one of the other letters I mentioned about this big bearish wide range bar that occurred here on the 21st, and I talked about, can prices retrace further into that bar past the halfway mark? And if they could, that would negate that big bearish wide range bar. So many markets did not. Some did. The NASDAQ 100 obviously did. I said we'll take a look at that. So today, the reversal certainly had myself and probably a lot of other people questioning whether the market's going to continue to move up here. The NASDAQ was moving higher. On the other hand, I saw the Russell 2000 underperforming and diverging, and while it was trying to go up, it began to fail while the NASDAQ was moving higher. And it's like, which one here is going to lead? Can the NASDAQ 100 pull the weaker market up? Will the weaker pull the stronger down? Again, keeping a second guessing as to what was going to happen here. And while I'm not certain we're totally out of the chop here and to see some additional downside, today's reversal and close is pretty convincing. And we'll take a look at, the various broader market indices to review that. So looking at the S&P 500 spiders here, you can see that retracement was about a little bit more than halfway. And then today, as the markets moved up, they began to approach the top of that bearish wide range bar. And, of course, when they were up there, I was certainly questioning, the analysis that I provided to you on March 10th that showed so many negative signals about what was happening in the underlying markets and the question of them continuing to go higher. And then, of course, the chop, the Q showing the relative strength, saying, well, maybe, it's just not going to, turn lower this time, and they're going to maybe work it off and go sideways and eventually move higher. But, again, today, based on today's reversal, this looks like pretty convincing for more downside. Tomorrow, maybe we get an inside bar, but this looks like it should be able to continue lower. And as I mentioned in Monday's letter, this swing low that has been created here should provide some support, but in a downtrend, these prior lows, the assumption is that prices will take them out. So eventually, if this correction does continue, and as you can hear from my commentary here, I still have my doubts, but things are getting weaker. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, and we'll have additional comments about that in the letter tonight. So again, I'll look for downside movement into this larger support area, assuming that we continue down, and we'll follow this, day by day or bar by bar. As I've taught in the past, and we'll see the reaction to this low and what the market internals look like at that time, and we just update accordingly as things happen. But today was surprising to say the least, but there was this consolidation that prices gapped up above, and that's bullish, and then prices continued to move higher. They had the pullback, and and then there was the retest, and things fell apart. And I just haven't turned the news on to see if there was something that got prices moving to the downside. There may have been, or maybe that traders, investors, fund managers just decided to bail. I'll take a look at that later on. Let's take a look at the other markets here. So The Qs, which have been showing relative strength, this little consolidation after making a new high, bullish price action, and then the pop up, and the same, the reversal back down again, stopped at this major support area, and we'll see what happens with that tomorrow. We have about 2 hours there of a drop, a little bit of a climactic drop there, and so maybe we get some stabilization here and an attempt to move up, especially here in the Qs. And we'll see how this goes into Friday, because now we have the possibility of a bearish little topping tail or breakout failure. So I'll be interested, as we all will, as to what the close is as of Friday. And that being said, Qs are in an uptrend. We have to respect the trend. Major support down here, and it's up until it's not. So we'll see what happens as we do in multiple time frames. And as already mentioned, this is a pretty convincing reversal bar to, especially in a break to a new high, and this negative close. It held support, so obviously tomorrow we'll see if it can break today's low and then continue to move lower. Now, one of the things that I mentioned to Dan today, as we were considering, some more downside in the Russell, which had been showing relative strength, and I was thinking, well, what is going to move this lower? Because at the time, even the Russell had gapped up, and it was holding up there. And what I had mentioned to Dan was, well, what if the biotechs begin to fall apart? Because that has a big influence here, especially the smaller biotechs on the Russell. And I had mentioned to Dan, well, here's this reversal, and if this begins to fail, this chart, this price action should result in a move lower. So Dan said to me, well, Greg, what do you think about this bullish wide range bar here, which was a gap down and reversal, which a lot of the indices did at the time. And I said to Dan, well, Dan, look at the big negative bearish wide range bar and the retracement here. While a little bit more than 50%, prices are beginning to roll over here under the 20 MA. And if this little changing of the guard, as we call it, begins to fail, well, the biotech's going to move down, and that's going to drag the Russell down. And if the Russell begins to drag down, others should begin to follow. So we began to look for a bearish call credit spread up here to sell. And so the IBBs, they just weren't attractive. But Dan said the XBI, which we'll talk in the letter here, this would be a better selection. So again, as I said, we'll talk about that in the letter. And while this has already begun to break lower, when it comes to option spreads, it's not as critical as it is getting on board the actual price action, as that is, because, well, with the credit spread, if the juice is there, as we like to say, up in this area, the likelihood of getting back up here is pretty slim, and that'll provide us with an income trade versus, well, you get a directional trade. Well, this looks like it can keep going lower. The directional trade will provide you a much greater gain. However, getting on board something when the momentum starts, that could be difficult. Now, we can certainly drop down to an intraday time frame, and what we would do is then look at, well, where did it break down from? And that would be a pretty big retracement. So I wouldn't want to see it there. But this little area here, well, that would be a normal retracement for prices to move up into, and then get a sell setup up in this area here if you're interested in actually shorting the XBI here up into this little resistance area. And I like to look at, as I said, areas. So that area would be like between 67.50 and just above 67.75 up in here, and we'd look for a reversal to get on board. And then as we go to the higher time frame, which would suggest continued lower prices. So we'll see how that shapes up for tomorrow. But the option credit spread, if that looks good to us tonight, and recommend it, if the retracement could obviously provide a better entry, but it's not as critical as actually shorting the underlying. So we'll see what happens there. The internet stocks, Amazon is just amazing as it's moved up. We'll take a look at that. But the FDN, which that's a big part of, popped up there, retested that high, 100% retracement of the bearish wide range bar. That big reversal, ugly bar on a retest. An M top suggests they break lower, so we'll see how that plays out. So, there could be a lot of short opportunities here that are coming up, in the next coming weeks. Let's take a look at the transports, which have also been lagging, showing relative weakness. Talked about that in Monday's letter and prior letters. Topping tail there, clearing the highs, turned back down. So everything early in the day was looking like, boy, this market just does not want to drop. And then it just gave it up in the latter part of the day. And so we'll see if this can break down through this support level. But overall, the larger pattern here suggests that, that could happen. Now, one of the things to keep an eye on as well that would give us confirmation and, part of our intermarket analysis would be, can bonds begin to push higher and above this resistance level here? So bonds moving up means yields moving down, which could potentially get gold. Let's just take a look at gold itself, GLD, which had a gap reversal today. Can that get through this area of resistance here in the 200 MA, which would then get us considering some gold stock plays or maybe a put credit spread? So we'll see how that shapes up. I'd like to see TLT break above that resistance and TBT, meaning the opposite, the yields, break down below this support level there. So you'll want to keep an eye on that as well. The other sector, which got clobbered, a bit more. You had the XBI down just over 2%, where the oil and gas was down almost 2.5%. But that actually might be bottoming here. So we'll see how, that's an ugly, nasty day today. But it made a new low reversal and took out the major resistance, came up to next resistance and the 50 MA, reversal back down. So we'll see how this plays out, whether it can ignore this bar, get some movement to the downside and stabilize. And we'll take a look at the oil sector stocks as that begins to shape up. So a lot of things to keep an eye on. Maybe the market's finally ready to give it up here to a greater extent than what has been the case. So I said I'd look at Amazon here. Just been incredible. That's not Amazon. And a little bit of a climactic move higher with a topping tail here. You don't like going after stocks that are making new all-time highs, especially one that has shown great relative strength and has led the market. But I'm not concerned with that as an intraday trade here. The 30-minute is still in an uptrend. Maybe there's a retest. We'll see what happens here. There is many more weaker stocks out there to pick on, for downside action. But, since this has been a leader, I'm interested to see if this can actually follow through a bit to the downside. Facebook, new high reversal in an uptrend. We give the benefit of the doubt to the trend. And so we'll see if that actually follows through as well. So that being said, we got a bit of a long video here tonight. We'll update further, probably, obviously in our intraday updates, we'll be doing that, and we'll have a much more extensive update for everyone Monday morning in the Master Trader Advisory Letter. That being said, happy trading, and we'll talk to you soon.